Previously on Sodor, the modern years.
As I said, it was a stormy night when Lily was put aboard the Air Adventure. That ship was lost at sea. The crew made it to the Isle of Man, but the ship and its cargo were never recovered.
Well, that's interesting.
Jeff just picked up a shipment of engine parts. What's interesting about that? They're probably just spares. Steam engine parts, Bill. Buffers and side rods. We've both heard those rumors going around. I did feel rather lonely, Ben, but I wasn't alone at the works, and I don't just mean Jeff. You mean those rumors are true? Not exactly. It's supposed to be a surprise. The Fat Controller asked me to keep it quiet.
Thomas, the Fat Controller asked me to tell you she's got a surprise lined up for you.
A surprise?
This isn't how she was planning to reveal it, but given what's happened, the Fat Controller thought you need some cheering up.
You mean those rumours? An engine is being restored here. So who's being restored here then?
Jeff chuckled.
See for yourself.
Thomas looked around, spotting Mavis undergoing repairs following her accident with George.
Mavis? I already knew she was here.
Before Jeff could reply, Thomas heard a workman speak from behind him. We'll just need to move you forward over the pit for an inspection.
All right.
Cinders and ashes.
Thomas gasped. He knew that voice.
Hello, Thomas.
Said Lily.
Good to see you again.
What are you doing here?
Thomas asked incredulously. He couldn't believe his eyes. A moment later, he smiled.
Hello, Lily. It's good to see you too.
Thomas looked closely at his old friend. Her maroon and gold paint was just as he remembered, the only difference being the lettering on her tanks and the number on her bunker.
I'll leave you two to catch up.
With that, Jeff departed.
Lily, how did you end up here? I thought...
I'd been scrapped?
Yeah, until a few months ago. Then we found out the Fat Director shipped you out of Kirk Ronan. We thought you were lost at sea.
I was lost at sea, Thomas. The ship I was on sunk in the storm. I didn't know how long I was down there, Thomas. A few months ago, I was pulled from the shipwreck and loaded on a salvage barge. A young lady was waiting there. She told me she was the current controller of the North West Railway and that she wanted to restore me to help with the work on your branch line.
So here you are. But how did they find you?
Miss Hatt said she put my story and photograph on something called the Internet. A professional diver from the Isle of Man saw it and recognised me. He seen me on some of his dives and sent her an electronic mail.
Well, my driver says you can find anything on the Internet.
Both engines laughed.
I've heard a little bit about how the railway's changed from some of the other engines.
Which other engines?
There was this little tank engine named Bill. Then there was Henry, in for one of his regular services.
I see.
Thomas had never really understood why she and Henry didn't get on.
They did well to keep your recovery secret. I didn't really hear anything about it at all.
As I said, the Fat Controller wanted to surprise you, Thomas.
There was a bit more to it than that, Geoffrey.
Lily glanced over at Thomas.
There was a possibility I wouldn't be able to be restored. We didn't want to get your hopes up. Fortunately, that wasn't the case.
For the next few hours, the two engines talked. Thomas was happy to share some stories of his friends and their adventures. Lily enjoyed it too, and she had plenty of questions about how the railway had changed since 1934.
So then Green Arrow carefully brought the coaches across the damaged tracks, and we made our way back to the museum.
Thomas finished.
You have certainly had a few adventures, Thomas. It sounds as though you have good friends too.
Oh yes, Percy and Toby are very good friends indeed. I don't know what I'd do without them.
Just as Lily was about to reply, Jeff arrived back at the works.
Have a good run down to Knapford.
I did indeed. I've got a delivery for you, Lily.
A delivery? What would that be, Geoffrey?
Lily's delivery turned out to be her new driver and fireman, accompanied by the Fat Controller. Introductions were quickly performed, then the Fat Controller spoke to Lily.
Lily, I'm aware the engineers here would like to perform additional testing on you, but they have assured me you're ready to go. With both Thomas and Mavis here, we do need another engine on the Farquhar branch. Sheffield is covering for Mavis at the quarry, and I'll need you to cover for Thomas.
Lily grinned, glad to be put back into service.
I'd be happy to help, Ma'am.
I'll see you in a couple of days, Lily.
See you then, Thomas.
With that, Lily departed. She was soon heading for Tidmouth, taking a train of empty, repaired trucks back with her. As she headed along the line, Lily looked around curiously. For all the time that had passed, she thought, the island hadn't changed that much. At least, not out in the countryside. But as she approached Tidmouth, she frowned.
Surely this cannot be Tidmouth.
Lily exclaimed, as she brought her train into the yard.
It is, Lily.
Lily glanced over, grinning as she spotted a familiar face.
Hello, Edward.
I heard rumours of an engine being restored, and I suspected it was you. I mean, I never saw you at the scrapyard.
Before Lily could explain any further, the yardmaster came up to her. You're Lily, aren't you?
That's correct.
Well, I'll need you to take Thomas's next train. It's due to depart shortly.
Of course, Yardmaster. Which coaches am I to use?
Annie and Clarabelle are on that siding over there. After turning around, Lily brought the two coaches to the station. They were delighted to see her, and the three were chatting away like old friends as they departed. For the rest of the day, Lily looked after Thomas's trains. She met Toby and Percy during the day, and a late afternoon run took her down to the Enofa quarry. But it wasn't until the day's work was over that she was able to have a proper conversation with her new friends.
I must say, we're glad to have you here to help us, Lily.
It's good to be back on my wheels, Toby. I must say, things have changed since I last ran on these rails.
I can imagine it would have been a bit of a shock.
You can say that again. I mean, these smokeless engines, diesels, they're not like anything I've seen before. Then there's Tidmouth. It's not the town I remember.
Don't worry, I'm sure you'll get used to it.
Thank you, Percy.
Lily replied. But despite the green tank engine's reassurance, she couldn't shake an uneasy feeling that this railway wasn't quite the home she remembered. It was raining the next morning when Lily was bringing a passenger train up from Farquhar to Tidmouth. She was making good time, but had been feeling slightly out of puff all morning, as she had the day before. Lily assumed, incorrectly, that she just needed to get used to running again. After all, she had been underwater for 75 years. But as she headed away from Hackenbeck, she felt a strange tickling in her left cylinder. A moment later, she realized there was something moving around in it.
Driver?
A loud whoosh sounded out, and Lily found herself enveloped in a cloud of her own steam. Her driver quickly braked. Lily, you've got a steam leak.
I suspected that may be the case.
While Lily's fireman kept an eye on her boiler, her driver examined her. There's something jamming one of your left valves open. I can remove it, but I'll need you to cool down first. Lily's face fell.
What about my passengers?
I'll call Hackenbeck. I think there is another train behind us. Lily's driver made a quick call on his mobile phone as he stepped around in front of her. Percy's behind us with the dairy train. He'll be along shortly. Lily smiled, relieved. She looked closely at her driver.
I saw one of the workmen at the steamworks using one of those too. Is it some sort of telephone?
Lily's driver chuckled and explained what a mobile phone was.
I see, driver.
Yet another thing she'd have to get used to, Lily thought to herself. A few minutes later, a whistle sounded out.
Lily, it's Percy here. I'm going to push you.
Thank you, Percy.
Percy gently buffered up to the rear of Lily's train.
Are you still able to use your brakes?
Yes. Why do you ask?
Can you brake for the stations then? I won't exactly be able to see them coming up.
Of course.
A couple of moments later, the train set off. Chuffing determinedly, Percy brought the combined trains up to speed. He worked his hardest as he moved the two trains along the line, trying to make up for lost time. Lily did what she could to help out too, but with one cylinder down, that wasn't much. They soon reached the next station, to find the station master there waiting for them. I've just received an email from the controller. Toby, Henrietta and Victoria are waiting at Elsbridge to take your passengers on. Lily glanced around.
Are they getting to Elsbridge by bus?
There's no need for that, Lily. I'll be happy to push you to Elsbridge.
Are you sure?
Lily knew that Percy had been working very hard indeed to move his trucks and her coaches. Surely he was exhausted by now.
Yes, your passengers have to get home after all,
replied the green tank engine. The guard's whistle sounded out, and a moment later they set off again. They reached Elsbridge without any further incidents. Once Lily's passengers had crossed over to Toby's train, Percy helped her to a nearby shed. He then departed to shunt his trucks. Later that afternoon, Lily was shunting at Farquhar. It had just been a loose screw jamming her valve, which had easily been fixed by her driver. She looked over as Percy arrived from the quarry.
Thank you for rescuing me this morning, Percy. I appreciate it, and I'm sure my passengers did too.
You're welcome, Lily. We have to look after the people on our branch after all. They do need to be able to rely on us.
Indeed,
Lily agreed. A moment later, she realized exactly what Percy had said.
Did Thomas teach you that?
Yes, it was one of the first things he taught me about running a branch line.
Lily couldn't help smiling. She remembered once saying almost those exact words to a certain blue tank engine. Maybe, she thought, the railway hadn't changed that much after all. Early the next morning, Lily was taking on coal when Thomas arrived, with a new buffer beam.
Morning, Lily.
Good morning, Thomas.
How are you settling in?
There is a lot to which I must become accustomed, but I think I can get used to this modern world.
I'm glad to hear that. I was a bit worried. I mean, I know the railway's changed a lot since you last ran.
Lily told Thomas what had happened yesterday.
When I spoke to Percy, he told me about looking after people on the line. That was when I realised. Some aspect of the railway may not be familiar to me nowadays, but the spirit I remember is still there.
Thomas grinned.
Well, we do what we can.
I'm looking forward to working on your branch line, Thomas. It's good to be home again.
In that case, welcome home.
Both engines chuckled. Then Thomas looked over at Lily.
If there's anything I can do to help Lily, just ask.
Thank you, Thomas. I'll keep that in mind.
Thomas departed to take his next train. He was glad Lily was feeling okay, and it was good to have his friend back again.